Welcome back to Digesting Dark, where we are tackling the Netflix series Dark one episode at a time. For today's podcast, we rewatched Season 2, episode number 3, that is titled Ghosts, and we are going to talk about it here. I'm Zach Brooks, and I am joined by the Agnes to my Noah, Aaron Brooks. Good afternoon, Aaron.
Good afternoon, Zach.
Welcome to the church.
Yeah, that was a really formal greeting there. Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard you say good afternoon to me.
I don't think I say good afternoon to very many people. Just to timestamp this, we're recording this in the afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. And we are not recording this from a church that I was not supposed to be in, wearing my yellow dress.
Yeah, oh man. All right. So before we get into that, let's just finish the opening. We are going through Dark one episode at a time, getting through Season 2. So everything we're talking about is with the knowledge of everything that happens through the first 2 seasons of Dark as we head towards June 27th, which is the release date of Dark Season 3, which also happens to be the final season of Dark. So make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast by subscribing anywhere where podcasts are available, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Anchor.fm. My favorite podcast app, Player.fm. If you have an Android phone, I highly recommend Player.fm. And we are on there as well.
Or YouTube.
Yeah, oh, yes, and on YouTube. So if you prefer to watch or listen to your podcast on YouTube, we are on there. We have a channel. It's called Digesting Dark. Just search for it. And leave a comment on there. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. You also can send us your feedback on Twitter. I'm at BrooksZA. He's at Aaron Jay Brooks. And once we get closer to Season 3, hopefully between when we finish Season 2 and start Season 3, we want to do a Q&A feedback show. So we have a couple questions that have already come in. We're going to compile all of those and do like a preview show before the 27th. So we can talk about all of that stuff.
Yep, looking forward to it. It's getting closer and closer by the day, like most things.
Yeah, as they say, tick-tock, tick-tock, as they say.
They do say that.
Yeah. So before we get into this episode, we're going to travel back in time to yesterday's episode because for Season 2, Episode 2, we forgot to give an MVP point at the end of that podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're gonna slip into the portal, walk through the cave, go back to dark matter real quick, and talk about who we want to give an MVP point to from that episode. Of course, in that episode, we had a lot of Claudia. She met with her younger self / older self. We had Gretchen. We found out how Gretchen got back in time. We had some stuff in the future with Jonas figuring out how to get the time portal working. We had Mikkel's a day at school for Mikkel and also his mother's birthday. So lots of stuff happened. Egon's cancer call. So who do you want to give your MVP point to from episode number 2?
Yeah, it's got to be Claudia. She was the key part of most of the episode. As you said, she was the focal point. She met herself, so she pulled, just like the stranger, when the stranger met Jonas, he won. She kind of replicated that, and even though it's not the first time it's been done, it's a power move. Anytime it's done, it's hard not to get an MVP once that's done. And then also she was responsible for Gretchen getting back, so it wasn't Gretchen. Gretchen has been taking all the credit as being the time traveler, but she didn't do anything. She just ran towards a stick. So
can you believe it? This is Claudia's first MVP point of this podcast.
I mean, it's really the first time she's been a major focus, so yeah. I can believe it. I mean, other than that, she's been a math tutor and just occasionally like a crazy old woman. So It adds up.
All right. Well, he's already in the lead for MVP points, but I don't know how I cannot give it to Jonas for that episode. Between what Jonas did and the stranger in that episode, he needs to get an MVP point. He got himself into the time portal. He got that time portal working. He convinced Scarface to let him out of the cage. And he showed his mom the truth about her husband, that Michael and Mikkel are the same person. So Jonas takes an even further commanding lead. He now has 5 MVP points The next highest are Mikkel, Ulrich, Alexander, and Noah, all with 2.
Yeah, it's a pretty wide gap.
Yeah. So we'll see. He might get another MVP point in this episode, although probably not because he wasn't really in this episode at all.
Yep.
All right. Now we'll jump in the portal and we'll go back to season 2, episode number 3. So this is Ghosts. And we open this episode in the bunker, in the blue room with the wallpaper. We've got young Helge in the bunker with Noah. Noah is giving a monologue about how he's watched young Helge grow, and they talk about the cycle of life. Noah tells him that God chose you and we've been watching you. They talk about how time is with you. And then we see Noah pull out the liquid and put the liquid into the back of the chair, which is the machine. Mm-hmm. And they're sending Helge into this machine. And as the machine closes, he says, tick-tock.
Yeah, it's definitely a better machine than the one Eric got to use.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It like fully covers you now instead of just covering your eyes.
Yeah, and I assume it's not. I assume that's not just like a production because they have more money now. I would assume that's not.
I think that's intentional. I think that after the machine killed all these kids, they realized they needed to tweak it, and maybe it's so it's kind of like just watched Guardians of the Galaxy the other day, and at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, they have to all like hold hands to share the power of the stone. And maybe they had to make the metal on the front of the machine bigger because it needed to disperse the energy, so it wasn't all just going to the eyes.
Yeah, also Helge isn't exactly normal, so maybe the effect isn't that it blinds you and kills you, but maybe it kind of screws you up from the inside, or I don't know, something has an effect of some kind.
Right, he's definitely different at this point, after this, and he's always was a little bit off, but he's even more off after this, and as he gets back,
he doesn't talk.
Notices this.
Yeah, he doesn't talk. Like he's silent at first until
he does say tick-tock, tick-tock.
Yeah, but until Noah hands him like the Bible or whatever to read that verse, which I don't know what verse that was, but he doesn't say a word till then. So maybe it's probably something that Noah whispered in his ear right before he left or something. I don't know. Something that was to
So what we saw, the last time we saw young Helge, he was in the bunker in the 50s because Ulrich had locked him in there. And then Jonas opens up the portal and he goes through the portal and ends up in that blue room. And that's how he wakes up there. So he traveled through the portal to the 80s. And then he must have spent 6 months in that room before he got sent back through the machine.
Yep. And then, we remember how the first season ended also with Jonas touching the portal with Helge.
Right. Yeah, and that's what sends Helge into the blue room and then sends Jonas into the future.
Yeah.
So, and then we are still in the 54 timeline after we come back from the credits. I don't know if it's always been like this, but I noticed the credits has a lot more it's like a kaleidoscope, but it has lots more of reflection of 3 things instead of just 2. So I don't know, I don't know if anybody's ever done an analysis, like if the credit art has changed at all, or if it's just that like I'm not always watching it and paying attention to it.
It's definitely changed season 1 to 2.
Oh, it did change season 1 to 2. Okay.
Yeah, I think it may be changing episode to episode also.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe at some point I'll go back and just watch the openings to see. Because I'm pretty sure it's subtly changing
which would make sense. I mean, that would be something the show would do. I'm really bad about I don't skip the credits. I like the song, but I'm also like, usually while the credits are going, I'm like setting up my notes for the episode and like not really like looking at the screen.
I just remembered a few times. Yeah, I haven't watched them close enough, but I remembered a few times watching and been like, I don't remember seeing like that much blue and white. Like this episode, I felt like I could kind of see a little more like blue and white. Maybe it was even showing like the sleeping pill like packaging that's later in the episode that Egon finds. I don't know, but like something's hinting at like Mikkel getting drugged to the point that he goes crazy, but he forgets who he is. Like clearly that is how Enos keeps him. That's like Enos's secret, is that she's gonna not we're kind of jumping around here a little, but with Mikkel / Michael, the way she gets him to eventually accept he's Michael is just by driving him crazy with pills. And I don't think
interesting. See, I do not get that impression at all from her.
I don't think it just start because she's hiding the sleeping pills when Egon comes. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. But That was very suspicious to me when Egon comes over and she's like, "Oh, he's sleeping," and he's like, "During the day."
That's okay. Yeah, so we'll get to that because I found that, but I thought that was benevolent. I thought she was taking care of him, and that she is just trying to help him, and like what helps him is just like sleeping it off.
She's trying to help the lie become the story, because all these talks about how we don't want to acknowledge the truths, and the truths are the stories we tell ourselves until they become. She's kind of embodying that. And
interesting.
He's always asking to go back. He's always asking about his mom, like with her birthday last episode, things like that.
But I think in the next episode, we're going to get Ulrich escaping from the mental hospital and reuniting with Mikkel for just a moment, I believe.
Yeah, which will probably, as a result, cause Enos to have to ramp up her efforts to control his brain and control how he thinks about who he is.
I think this is the first part of the show where we really diverge on character motivations, because for the most part we pretty much agree with a lot of the stuff on this. I really do not get like a malicious vibe from Enos at all.
Well, there's a reason why Hannah and doesn't want her involved in the picture.
That's true. I always thought that was because it's Hannah.
Yeah, so maybe I'm on Hannah's side here and I'm misunderstanding Enos's intentions.
Could be, yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get to that at some point in the near future. Before then, after the credits, we see Agnes and Doris. They're having some special time together, and Agnes, of course, is Tronte's mom. Doris is Claudia's mom, and it seems like they are full on having an affair together. And I guess this has been. I don't think this is the first time this happened. It seems like they're pretty comfortable with each other. So it's been going on for the last 6 months. And Claudia walks in on them. I do think this is the first time that Claudia walks in on them, although it doesn't seem like she's super surprised that this is going on. So I think it's kind of it's one of these secrets that everybody kind of knows.
Yeah, exactly.
And back in the 50s, especially, a lesbian affair would be very, very unconventional and frowned upon. So, although, to be determined when Agnes is from. Maybe Agnes is from a time when that's more accepted.
Yeah.
So Agnes, in her bright yellow dress for this whole episode, which you did reference at the beginning of this podcast, the bright yellow dress that Agnes wears really screws me up, because it makes me keep thinking that Agnes is somehow related to Jonas. And maybe she'll end up being related to Jonas, but as of now, we don't know any relationship between her and Jonas.
Yeah. We don't know a lot about her yet.
Right. I mean, maybe Agnes is Adam's daughter, and that could make sense. It just seems like the only other character who we see in a bright yellow outfit like that is Jonas.
Yeah, well, one thing with Claudia we definitely see in this episode is Agnes in this episode is when Claudia gets killed by Noah, Agnes takes a deep breath at the moment it happens.
She feels it. She can feel it when that happens.
Yeah, so I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But
yeah, we get a ton of Agnes this episode.
She's definitely tied to Claudia in some way. Teed to her,
yes.
Yeah.
She's a teed woman. So yes, Agnes, is talking to Doris. Doris is upset, and Agnes tells Doris, "Don't worry, every family hides something." So again, we're talking a lot about secrets. I don't remember us talking about secrets as much in season 1 as we have in season 2.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of how Wyndon's introduced right away, is it's a place full of secrets. They're always talking about everybody's lying, everybody's keeping secrets. I don't know. It's a pretty central theme of this show.
Yeah, I guess there is an episode in season 1 called Secrets. It's just, I don't know. It feels like we've really gone into secrets hard in the first couple episodes of this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe I don't know. I wouldn't say necessarily more or less. It seems like lies and secrets are ingrained in this show, like time. Yeah.
And then we see Helge returning home in 1954. He's been gone for 6 months, and his Greta. I couldn't remember his mother's name. Greta. It took me a minute to remember her name. She says a prayer, and she's thankful that he's returned. But she says, she can tell that something is different about him.
Yeah, and she is saying she's thankful he returned, but she wasn't really. I mean, she talks about in previous episodes how she prayed for his kind of downfall, and how she doesn't know who he really is and why he's here, type of thing. So she said it, but even when Noah comes in later, Noah's like, kind of re-solidifying her like happiness about the situation. About
right. Well, and when she met with Noah last season, she said she had prayed that he, died and everything like that.
Probably not Burns' kid.
Mm-hmm.
Or
and speaking of Burn seems to be out of the picture.
Mm-hmm. Like a lot of parents.
Yeah, so he's gone, and we do get reference to him not being there, but I don't know if he left or went away. He's time traveling.
I think it's just saying he's buried with work. Like
because he does run the power plant. I don't know. Yeah, I guess he wouldn't have gone too far because nobody ever.
I don't think he's like left. I think he's just like always at work, just like Ulrich's always at work, just like Charlotte's always at work.
Mm-hmm. Claudia's always at work. Yeah,
exactly. It's just another person who's never there for their own family.
Mm-hmm. And then we stay in the 50s. We see a scene of Egon and Daniel. They're talking about Ulrich, the mystery man, who they still don't know who he is. And they find out. First they say that nobody came for him, and that he's like a ghost. So we do have a reference to Ghost, which is the name of the episode.
Yep.
We get a focus shot on the family photo of the Tiedemans of Egon, Claudia, and Doris as well. And they before they find out that Helge is back, it's Egon. So this is Daniel Conwald that he's talking to? Okay.
Yes.
So he's asking Daniel about his wife and basically if they're still intimate with each other, and says that his wife really hasn't been. Calls him old-fashioned, and Egon says, when you have kids, it just you become different people and you change.
Yeah, and Daniel's like, it's nothing like how we imagined it or how they portray marriage, all those things. But yeah, so Daniel Conwald would be Enos Conwald's father.
Yep.
Yeah, and Enos Conwald is Michael's adopted mother, and we don't know who else Enos is the mother to, but whoever that baby who disappeared, that's who, that person is. Maybe could that person be Jonas, who just traveled from like that age?
Maybe. I think it would screw things up if Jonas wasn't actually
who's the baby. Who do you think is Enos's baby?
Yeah, and I do have that written down for our Q&A before season 3. Okay. I was like, I definitely want to make sure we talk about that.
I'm just trying to figure out how twisted this is that Daniel Conwald is like responsible for planning in Claudia's father's head, Egon, to be unfaithful. I'm trying to figure out why that's so twisted and how that makes Egon's story more tragic, because everything with this episode is like adding to a tragedy.
Tragedy of Egon. Oh, definitely. And I think it's interesting because this mystery man that he's so worried about, Ulrich, is Egon doesn't realize that, but this is going to be the grandson of the woman that his wife is cheating on him with.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's Agnes's grandson is Ulrich, and and even Trante, like I think they're still living in that house with them. I think they're all still living together. So Ulrich's father, like all this time that Egon is obsessed with this guy Ulrich, his father in the future is actually living in Ulrich's house or in Egon's house right now.
Yeah,
it's like a wild web.
Yeah, with no beginning.
Yep, exactly. Which we talk a lot about that. So at the end of the scene, they get alerted by one of the other police officers that Helge is back. He's returned 6 months later.
Yep.
And so they're going to go investigate. Before we get him investigating, though, we get Claudia and Trante. They're walking in the woods together. I did note that Claudia, it seems like, only has a single loop in her hair. You brought up that her hair is in loops the last time we saw the child version of Claudia.
Yeah.
This time, and I don't know if it was just the way it was shot, but I was looking for the second loop and I could not see it. I only saw one.
It's a really weird hairstyle.
Yeah, definitely is. Especially for the 50s. Actually, the 50s, it's not like they were into like wearing really strange things.
Yeah, and she's asking some interesting questions to Trante.
Yeah, she's asking Trante about where he's from and asks why he never talks about his family. And Trante is saying that his mother was unhappy before they got to Winden. and that Agnes, and we don't know who you're talking about at the time. Of course, now at the end of the episode, we know who they're talking about. But Tronte says that his mother has a brother who she hates.
Yep.
And of course, that brother is Noah. We get that confirmed in this episode. And then Tronte takes off his pants and his underwear.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, Claudia asks him to.
Right.
And then it snaps to Claudia as a middle-aged woman.
Exactly.
Like,
yep. So then we go right from child Claudia's face. We get a lot of these really great cuts between different scenes of like the same characters or characters that are similar. So we went right from Egon and Daniel talking to Claudia and Tronte, and they're talking about Ulrich to Claudia and Tronte. So Tronte is Ulrich's father. And then we go from Claudia and Tronte, which is a weird reversal of Agnes and Doris, of course. Like their parents are sleeping together while Claudia and Tronte are also sleeping together, basically.
While Ulrich and
and while Ulrich is being held by Egon. So like so many levels of this Tiedemann and Nielsen connection.
Yep.
And then, like you said, we go right from child Claudia to 80s Claudia to the 1980s Claudia, not 80-year-old Claudia. And Regina is looking, she goes, "Where are the ghosts?"
Yep.
And of course, The Ghosts is the name of the book. I've never heard of this book, The Ghosts.
Yeah, I think I have, but I don't know much about it. I'm pretty sure it's a maybe you think it's something else.
Yeah.
But I think it's a real book.
And then Claudia, having been warned in the last episode by the older version of herself that she doesn't have much time with Regina left, she asks Regina to, instead of going to school, to skip school and spend the day with her. And Regina gives all these reasons why. She's got tests and other things going on. So like a good teenager, she doesn't want to skip school. And she also says she has swimming as well. And then Claudia gives her daughter a hug, probably the first time we've seen Claudia give her daughter a hug in this show. And Regina, instead of saying that she's running late and has to go, and maybe this is a translation, I don't think so though, Regina says, "I have no time," which is very on the nose considering Regina in the future is going to literally not have much time because she's dying. But
and it shows at one point old Claudia looking at her, Regina with the cancer. And then Claudia ends it by saying "another time."
Yeah, she says another time, and then as soon as Regina leaves, Claudia thinks about that book, which she hasn't thought about in 6 months, that Helge gave her. That is the book, A Journey Through Time.
Yep.
So that is the H.G. Tannenhaus book, of course.
So could Claudia's whole motivation end up being to try to prevent her family members from having cancer?
Yes, that's what I got by the end of this episode, is that the reason why Claudia goes on this whole thing that she will encompass her entire life. She's going to start traveling through time and not, she after this, she's not going to spend much time with Regina. That's when old Claudia says you don't have much time with Regina left. It's not just that Regina's going to die in the future. It's that the Claudia of this age is not going to be spending much more time in this timeline anyways.
Yeah, so you have the battle of love of family, love of an individual with Jonas, and why he's traveling through time. And then, there's probably 3 or 4 different people who are all having their own individual motivations for traveling through time, and they're all affecting the other person because
exactly. And I think by the end of this episode, we get Noah's motivation for time, which is I think something bad happens to Charlotte, and he's trying to prevent something bad from happening to Charlotte, which is why he's doing what he's doing.
Because he goes, "Oh no, Charlotte," as he's reading the notes.
Right. Yep. Exactly. But
so it's like the best intentions have the worst results
for everybody else, right? And Claudia, it seems like, is going to dedicate her entire life to time travel, to trying to stop both Egon and Regina from dying of cancer.
Yeah, Jonas.
And probably will end up causing it. When we look back at everything, it's probably going to be that we obviously know she causes the death of Egon by the end of the season, but that she's going to cause the death of Regina. Probably is going to do something that is why Regina gets cancer or why Regina stays.
She'll probably cause the destruction of her entire family.
Right, exactly.
Just by trying to prevent it. Everybody's probably going to cause the destructions of their entire family.
Yep. So
dark.
It's very lives up to the name. And then we see Egon. He's getting into some death metal. So Egon in the 80s is listening to that record that
terrible song.
Ulrich. So it was interesting. I noticed that the song, the band is called Creator with a K, but I definitely think that the title Creator, that's very biblical, relates to God being the creator.
It's got the Sigmundus logo and
it does have the artwork. And the lyric, of course, is my only aim is to take many lives. The more I take, the better I feel. That lyric really makes me think of the artwork in Adam's study with all the spirits like flying out. I feel like that's like, if that's the depiction of somebody taking as many lives, and the more I take, the better I feel.
Yeah, and Adam is like the most obsessed with kind of destroying families of any of the characters. Everybody else seems to be like interested in saving their family, while he seems to be like interested in destroying all four.
Probably because by doing that, he causes, he's trying to save somebody, whether it's Martha or somebody else. So, I think that it's just interesting they picked that lyric. It's clearly, it clearly represents. I mean, even if you just think of it as like the reasons why we're trying to prevent these things in this show is because the lives are being taken.
Yeah.
And then we go back to the 50s timeline. We've got young Egon talking to Greta. Young Egon being the inspector version of Egon. And when he shows up, actually, I noticed that it was interesting. So he shows up to talk to Greta about Helge, and they said, the inspector asked you a question. So they refer to Egon as the inspector, which of course is going to be the nickname that Ulrich takes on in the 80s when he's in the mental hospital.
Yeah, the whole mental hospital and Ulrich as a whole, it all feels like, and we'll talk about it, I guess, when we get there, but it all feels like an homage to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, it definitely reminds me of that. I think that's
right down to the inspector that's like the chief, like that kind of pronoun name.
And he is like really big, like he
looks like the chief.
Yeah, he does look like Chief.
And I don't know if it was earlier or later in the season, but I know there's a shot where he jumps out the window and it's right out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yep, I think that's in the next episode where he jumps out.
Yeah, like, and they show him like jumping. It's the same angle. It's the same. And Milos Forman, I believe, was German.
Yeah, and I do think while Enos, I mean, maybe this lends credence to your like Enos is evil theory. Enos reminds me of Nurse Ratched. Like she kind of looks like her.
Yeah, Enos does some shady shit to get Mikkel that causes Mikkel's illness, I think. Like mental illness.
Yeah, well maybe she's the Nurse Ratched of this show.
Yeah, I just think like, yeah, I don't think she's I'm finding a lot on the rewatch, the characters I'm suspicious of were characters that I thought were kind of good on my first watch. I'm suspicious of HG. I'm suspicious of Claudia. I'm suspicious of, Jonas. I'm like everybody who I wasn't almost.
Everybody's a suspect.
Well, like guys like Alexander, I think are just pawns, like really just pawns, having no idea what they're doing.
Egon is like the best example of a pawn too, I think.
Yeah, Egon. I think that we'll see Egon getting used from both sides here. Maybe Ulrich really is using Egon when he's saying the things he's saying to, even as an old man in the like that may just be how twisted Ulrich's path got along the way, as he forgot why he was doing it and ended up getting motivated to just punish Egon.
Just by revenge. Yeah, it definitely could be. So we'll get there. We're going to get some good stuff with Egon and Ulrich. So younger Egon tries to talk to Helge. Greta says the inspector asked you a question. So I wrote down about him being the inspector, mirroring Ulrich in the future. And Helge still won't talk. Then we cut from young Helge to Helge 33 years later in the 80s, and he is meeting with Egon's daughter, Claudia. So she's also asking him questions, and she's wanting to know why he gave her the book. And Helge says, you might be the only one who can understand me. Time is always with you. The travelers could undo everything. So Helge is another character who wants to undo bad things that have happened, and the time traveling could undo that. And then Helge talks about Noah. So this is after, 6 months after Helge and Noah captured all the kids together. Helge tells him that, Helge tells Claudia never to trust Noah. And he says, I never wanted any of this. So, he even it's like a super intense. He grabs her by the arm when he starts talking about Noah. And, it's like really raises alarm bells for her. So, and this is Helge putting Claudia on the path where we're going to see that older Claudia gets killed by Noah because of this rivalry between the two of them, which may have just been, if you think of beginnings, this kind of started with this conversation with Helge in the hospital.
And I don't think Helge realized what he was doing. So Helge and Egon are very similar too.
Yeah, Helge definitely doesn't know what's going on. He's just very confused by all the time travel and the different, he's different interactions. And we're going to see in just a couple scenes where he sees Noah as well, and he's even more confused. We get a shot of Noah at the church, and then we see Agnes walking into the bunker. I noticed that Noah wears a hat, as does Agnes. Right? They both wear some version of a hat. I can't think of any other characters really in this show who wear hats besides the two of them.
Yeah, not really.
Yeah. So she's still in her yellow dress. As she walks into the bunker, she sees older Claudia there, so the White Devil version of Claudia. And they're talking. Agnes is saying how they sent Helge back to return today, and that Noah has returned. Claudia says, mentions blood, so this is kind of as they're teasing out for us that Agnes and Noah are related, which we didn't know before then. And Claudia says our entire lives are defined by family, Sigmunda's. So the way she said it, like it was two sentences, but basically the way she said it is our entire lives are defined by family, and you could read that as like comma Sigmunda's, meaning like Sigmunda's is our family. There is our blood family, but there is also this family of this cult of Sigmunda's that we're all a part of.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. And I think that's, there's so much talk about the kind of nuclear families in this show, the blood families, but they all related of like this family of Windan and this family of Sigmunda's. Claudia says that they're preparing for the last cycle, which of course is going to happen at the end of this season. And Claudia says that to Agnes, your brother is a blind fool and he's caused many sufferings. So, for the people watching the first time, this is their like, oh, Agnes and Noah are related and that is her brother. Of course, we knew that already.
Yep.
Claudia also gives her a folded up piece of newspaper, and I was trying to remember what this was. I kept saying that Claudia kills Noah, and we get that later in the episode where Noah kills Claudia. I just had that reversed in my mind.
Yeah, I remember you saying it. Yeah.
So, and the folded up piece of newspaper is a newspaper clipping about how they found the White Devil's body the next morning.
In 1954.
Yep. So, and Agnes looks at this, so Agnes knows. I think I'm not sure if it has the date on it, but I think she knows that this is saying like this is the last time you're going to see me, basically.
Yeah, it says in the article I posted. It said in the article the date. And then...
Oh, okay. So it does say the next day. And so before they depart, Claudia hugs Agnes and just says, "I wanted to thank you for everything. My mother loves you." So, really, really interesting stuff
Yeah, I don't know. Could Scarface be like a daughter of Agnes or something?
I mean, could Scarface be Enos's daughter even?
Yeah.
Or Scarface. Yeah, I guess Scarface wouldn't be Agnes, but I do think like Agnes came from somewhere else. Agnes came from somewhere where a lesbian relationship is not the way it would be treated in the 50s, which is why she's just like ready to do it. Yeah, I think she's from if not 2020, if not later. So.
Yeah.
And then we see Claudia. She is back. So then we go from the older version of Claudia to Claudia in the 80s, and she's visiting H.G. Tannhaus in his shop. He points out that Claudia has one brown eye, one blue eye, which does get brought up a couple times in this episode. And this is interesting because this is another one of those cycles where Claudia, as an old woman, visits H.G., and then that's how the young HG meets Claudia for the first time. And of course, this is the older version of HG meeting younger Claudia for the first time. So it's an endless cycle.
Yeah, and HG seems like more unhinged.
Yeah, well, I think it's because he's been obsessing about time travel for 33 years.
Yeah.
And he said he wondered when she would visit him again with the book. She's confused. She's still trying to grasp all this, but she's confused because she's like, I've never met you before. Which is the reverse of what we will see later on in the episode.
Yeah.
And then we get another scene between Egon and Daniel, and they're talking about the kids disappearing and Helge returning, and they can't figure out how these are connected. How could Helge return if Ulrich, this mystery man, has been locked away this whole time, and that he must have accomplices? So we go right from Egon, younger, and Daniel going to question Ulrich to Ulrich and Egon talking in the 80s, so the older version of both of these men. They're talking about the record, the creator record, and Ulrich Egon asks Ulrich if he killed the boys, and also he wants to know how Ulrich knew Egon had cancer. And he asks him if he knows who the White Devil is, which, I would think that Egon would think that Ulrich might be the White Devil because he kind of looks like what you would think a White Devil is. Mm-hmm. And finally, Ulrich talks, and after 33 years with them trying to figure out who Ulrich is, Ulrich says, "I'm Ulrich Nielsen." And Egon seems very confused by this.
Yeah.
And so then we go back to, so we're kind of going back and forth between this and Claudia and HG talking during the 80s. And HG is talking about the bootstrap paradox. And he says the way the bootstrap paradox works is it's when an artifact is sent to the past and it creates a cycle, there is no origin. So the book is an example of a bootstrap paradox. The idea of the book, because he never had the idea of the book because he received the book from the future after he had already written it. Mm-hmm. Same thing happens with the blueprints and the machine. I think you could come up with a dozen examples of bootstrap paradoxes in this show. Even people are bootstrap paradoxes.
Yeah, well, I mean, they bring up how the world is full of these paradoxes that we just don't acknowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he says we choose to ignore them.
Yeah, and it's full of these paradoxes. So pretty much anything you can look at, you really don't know the origination of where or when it began, mm-hmm. if there's a beginning. So
yeah, and I mean, all of Winden could be a bootstrap paradox, really. Maybe that's what we find out at the end of this.
Yeah, bootstrap paradox is when the question of if the chicken or the egg came first becomes irrelevant,
right?
As HG said earlier.
Now I don't know why it's called the bootstrap paradox.
Bootstrap because the bootstrap you have to go across and back over. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of just that.
Yeah. So then we get Egon visiting Ulrich in the 50s. So we get the reverse of the scene we just saw earlier. He's letting him know that Helge is home again, mm-hmm. and Ulrich won't talk still. But when they close the door, Ulrich just says quietly to himself, "I'm Ulrich Nielsen." So even though they said he's heavily medicated, he still knows who he is. He's just choosing not to say anything.
Mm-hmm. And this could kind of mirror his son being heavily medicated, forgetting who he is.
Yep. Yeah. It's a good point. And then back to the 80s, we see Egon. He is looking at Daniel Conwald's notes about the missing boys as well. So, and then we see HG and Claudia. They're talking about the machine, and HG is talking about the origin of explaining the machine, and HG says Claudia wants to know how it works.
Yep. So again, like, who came up with the blueprint,
mm-hmm.
and who figured out the time machine to start?
Right, because he gets the information and he passes it to the person. Right, exactly. Everybody's just passing it and traveling back in time and telling somebody back.
Yeah, but where did it start and who started it?
Mm-hmm. All right, so then we are back in the 50s timeline, and Greta is talking to Noah. And Noah has come to visit, and they were talking about Helge and how different Helge has been since he's returned. Greta mentions with Bernd gone, so we don't know where Bernd is. I know you said that you think he's just working, but it does seem weird to talk about with Bernd gone if he's just like working. So maybe he's been traveling as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I just really do take it to mean like gone, like just how Katarina says Ulrich's gone. Peter says Charlotte's gone. Mm-hmm. Tronte's gone a lot with Jana.
Yeah, I can't remember what we get about Bernd in this season. I mean, we get him just a little bit in season one.
Pretty missing. He's appropriately kind of missing a lot this season. So either I decide to ditch those storylines with the 8 episodes as opposed to 10. I mean, they're missing 2 hours of time from
True.
So, or they're maybe going to address them this season, or it's just as simple as all he cares about is his power plant, and when the kids show up, the first thing he goes to is the power plant. Everything is about the power plant for him. So it could just be like he's greedy, and that's his like trap. He thinks the power plant is his way out.
It could be. I'm going to put a pin in the Burned and just say, like, not put a pin like we just started talking about it, but I'm going to add it to my list of things for our pre-season 3 podcast that we're going to do, because I am very curious and, like, if we see any more of Burned this season, and what his deal is. So I think it's very strange.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
All right, so Greta also mentions that Helge is possessed by the devil, and getting more religious talk between Noah, with the devil and God. Helge comes downstairs and sees Noah and immediately runs to him and hugs him too. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's Stockholm.
Like he was his dad.
Oh yes, that's a good. Yeah, like greets him like it's his father. And as far as we know, he just saw Noah yesterday. Like it hasn't been 6 months since he's seen Noah. It seems like we just saw him get sent back, and then he's seeing him either that same day or the next day. So it's weird that you wouldn't greet somebody you just saw like that, but he clearly has a strong connection with Noah because of the traveling. He's going to in the future have a connection with Noah because they're going to work together to capture the kids. Noah says that time is always with you, which I believe is what he says at the beginning of the episode, right? Yes, he says time is always with you at the beginning of the episode as well. So that mirrors that scene between them.
Yeah, and time is often kind of used interchangeably with God in this show.
Like father time, yeah.
God is always with you, same thing.
Maybe that image that we keep seeing Elizabeth looking at with the two gods blowing on the world, one is time and one is fate, one is God, one is religion.
It's something like that, I'm sure.
The battle of Earth between two opposing forces.
Yeah.
Maybe time and death, time and ghost, something like that.
Oh, no.
So Noah asks Helge to read a passage of the Bible, and as we both said, we don't know what that passage was, but he does say, "You are my shield and my protector." Noah lets him keep the Bible, and the three of them all put their, they're kind of like joining hands, and I noticed that all three of their hands were like almost like a, grasping each other. So another example of three. So we have Greta, Noah, and Helge's hands all together.
Yeah.
And we do know that Greta, and maybe as we have to bring up, Greta said in the first season that Helge's father she implied that it was not burned.
Do you think she was hinting it was Noah?
Maybe, but she just doesn't seem to know who Noah is. So it doesn't make any sense unless it was like kid Noah and she doesn't realize, like the younger version of Noah, and doesn't realize that it was the same guy. I mean, there's a weird connection definitely between Greta and Noah. And we don't know who Helge's father is. We don't know much about Burned. So that whole thing, maybe we'll get more in the next couple episodes, but I think that whole thing is going to be a big question mark leading into season 3.
Yeah, I do too.
So, and that's something we really need to get answered, I think. And I'm sure we will. If this was any other show, I would worry so much about this alternate universe thing. Any other show, I'd be like, oh, this is the jumping the shark moment where it's the sideways universe. It's just because this show is so interesting as it is. Like, we don't need an alternate timeline because just with the time jumps, it's so interesting. But I trust that Dark, if any show is going to do it right, Dark will do it right, and it won't jump the shark.
Yeah, it hasn't yet.
Yep, jump the Dark. So. All right, and then Egon goes to speak with Mikkel. So we're back in the 80s now, and she's talking speaking about Mikkel, she's talking with Egon is talking with Enos. And Enos is referring to Mikkel as Michael. So in the last episode, Enos was calling him Mikkel. Clearly, it's like an inside the house, outside the house type thing, where to the public, he's known as Michael, but with just Enos, it's their secret that she calls him Mikkel, which is his actual name. She says he's sleeping. We talked about this earlier in the episode. She says that he's sleeping. You think it's a nefarious...
Well, Egon says right away, he's like, during the day. And she says, not feeling good. Egon gets up, I think, like getting ready to leave at some point. And he sees the two sleeping pills.
Right.
Yeah, that have both been freshly opened from this.
Yeah,
but those are like over-the-counter sleeping pills. And Enos says they were for her and that she was having trouble sleeping. But it's like, okay.
Yeah, because of bad dreams.
Right. The kid's sleeping during the day. He's... probably, she's trying to chalk up anything this kid's saying to bad dreams, even though she knows it's something else. She doesn't want to acknowledge what it is. Yeah. And eventually these over-the-counter sleeping pills aren't going to be enough, and it's going to take the next step.
Yeah.
And eventually she's going to just assume he's mentally ill. And she's just, because like that, and that's like the illness maybe Jonas was talking about with Hannah when he says before he got sick. So I don't think before he got sick just means when he committed suicide. I think before he committed suicide, he had a lot of weird social,
Yeah, I
probably
think I think so too. And I think it's
just to avoid and maintain being existing, basically.
right.
But to an outside person who doesn't have the information, because that's his ultimate secret that he keeps in the dark from everybody, that comes across as him being sick or crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I just think, I mean, if he was like that forever, how did he end up getting with Hannah in the first place? So, I mean, he's got to be kind of adjusted enough that he ends up marrying Hannah and fathering a child that is a teenager with Hannah. So he's got to be with it at least somewhat to have this baby.
Or he's just another pawn, and he, I don't know. We don't know yet. I don't know if he just falls in love with Hannah. I think maybe Hannah has some information as to who he is and causes things to fall into them falling.
So I don't think so, because in the last episode, when she finds out that Mikkel is Michael, she's genuinely surprised by that.
Or she's acting genuinely. You can't believe anything with Hannah, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
And she would even lie to her. She'd lie to her own son.
Yeah, like, she could be guided that way. I don't know if I buy that she knew, but it could have been something like Noah has been interfering for years and she didn't realize, pushing them together, something like that.
Yeah, or maybe by doing this, the future affects the past, and by the stranger in the future revealing to Hannah that in the past Hannah met Mikko, then maybe that affects Hannah, why Hannah goes up to him in the first place in the past.
Yeah.
Future affects the past affects the future.
Right. There's definitely more to it that we need to see about Mikkel, just like we need to see more about Noah and Helge.
Well, I remember when they meet, Hannah and Mikkel, like she looks at him kind of, and like she recognizes him, and then goes up to him.
Right, and she says,
and goes with the magic line,
right,
and
exactly.
says what we want. So, I mean, that probably in part is the stranger's own fault for taking her back and showing her that in the future. So, yeah, well, I don't know
how that ends up. I mean, it could be that Hannah stays from the 50s all the way to the 80s because she's with, she goes back and she's with Egon. So maybe there's an older version of Hannah that's somehow influencing things in the 80s when they get
there. Exactly.
So also some other things that happen in this, of course, that connection between Hannah and Egon is going even more in this because Egon is asking if Mikkel has ever used any names or said anything about his parents' names. He even asks if he said the name Ulrich Nielsen, if he's mentioned anything about Ulrich. Of course, there's Ulrich and Hannah are connected, and at the end of the season, Egon and Hannah are going to be connected. He asks if Mikkel ever brought up the White Devil, who is the older version of Claudia. Ines says no to that. Be curious to see if there's any White Devil and Mikkel that get connected at all, if there's any reason that, if that's any foreshadowing in this. So,
and Ulrich hasn't been brought up with Ines yet, has he?
No, I think she probably knows him as like a kid in Wyndham because everybody in Wyndham knows each other, but she doesn't know anything about this weird version of Ulrich, the future version of Ulrich, or anything like that that we know of. And Egon also says that he asks if he can talk to Mikkel tomorrow. So the next episode, since every episode is taking place a day apart, I'm assuming we are going to see that Egon and Mikkel interview tomorrow in the next episode. And I do like that in the captions. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the captions for the music will sometimes say like what the score sounds like. So at this point, it said oppressive music.
Yeah, I've noticed it uses some interesting adjectives.
Yeah, I like
think
the
it's
adjectives.
Just a closed captioning, having fun.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with the show, but it's just fun. Sometimes I'm going to start jotting those down. There's another one later in this episode that I thought was funny, but oppressive music I thought was very good.
Yeah, I've seen dire music, ominous.
Yep.
A few other ones.
Yep. So before Egon leaves, he asks for a photo of Mikkel. Actually, I thought the photo of Mikkel looked quite a bit like the photo of Mads. And to the point that I almost thought it was the picture of Mads, but it's not.
I'm telling you, Mikkel is Mads. I don't know how that's gonna work, but
Yeah, unless
like,
it's maybe, I mean, maybe Mads is the alternate universe version of Mikkel.
right? Yeah, which I mean, still, the reason I don't have a lot of alternate universe theories is because I still don't understand that. So
I don't. Yeah, I
it's
sort of
hard to
understand it
form.
in
It's
other
hard to form
other shows, but
theories on it.
right.
So,
That's
but I
why.
do think Mads and Mikkel, they look way too much alike. Mikkel, even when he originally goes through time, and has the marks on his face, has a mark on his chin.
Oh,
Like,
interesting. Yeah.
which, yeah, if you see the cuts, he has the cut on his chin even, which it heals obviously, but still, I mean, I think that they're just too similar.
Hmm.
Like, they're way too similar
Yeah.
for it
There's.
not to.
All right. Well, I will. I'm going to put a pin in that, and we're going to talk. If we don't get a question out, we'll make sure we talk about Mads Mikkel,
Mm-hmm.
Mads Mikkel, and Hannah. I'll also put on there. So yeah, I have a doc that I'm keeping with questions we get in and things we want to talk about as we
Yep,
as
but
our
back
last
to
podcast.
back to this episode.
Yeah. All right. So then we get a scene in the church between Noah and his sister Agnes. And I'd watched this one twice. This was a very good one. Um, Agnes is, Agnes is saying that she wants to come back to Adam, and so we're setting up this rivalry between Adam's people and Claudia's people. Noah tells her that if you think Adam will take you back, you are wrong. Agnes says that she knows where the last few pages of the book are, so they've been looking for these last couple pages of the book that we've seen floating around. Not HG's book, but the diary that we've seen people using. But it's missing a couple pages, and Agnes knows where those are. They are with Claudia.
Mm-hmm.
Claudia gives him the newspaper clipping, and I wrote down here, it's the newspaper clipping showing that Noah has died. Nope, other way around. It's the newspaper showing that Claudia has died, and she considers it an offering of peace. And it's interesting if we think about some of the books in this show, right? We have like Noah's diary that gets passed along. We have the HG book. We have Egon's book where he writes down his documentation of the crimes that he's investigating. And we also have the Bible that Noah gives to Helge.
Yep.
So
kind of all the levels of like law, religion, philosophy, and science.
yeah, that's exactly. That's a great way.
That's a quartet, but still.
Like, well, there might be more books too. I'm trying to think if there's any other books that we have. The ghosts.
I mean, the blueprint.
Yeah, the blueprint.
Could
the map.
be considered the maps. There's multiple maps.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that'll be something interesting to track. Then we go to the 50s. Egon is looking at the Ulrich picture. Well, I guess we were already in the 50s, but we stay in the 50s. Egon is looking at the Ulrich picture. The White Devil version of Claudia walks in, which I just like that I can identify her as White Devil, just like we could identify the Stranger as the other version of Jonas. Mm-hmm. And I thought this next couple sets of scenes was awesome because we get a discussion between old Egon and old Claudia. Mm-hmm. And she tells him, "You are too good of a person. The world doesn't deserve you." And she asks him to forgive her for everything. And she says, "The good ones get hit the hardest." And then I wrote down in parentheses, time travel ruined his marriage, his life. It actually killed him. So, a lot of sympathy for Egon, because if it wasn't for time travel, so many of these things wouldn't have happened in his life. So he's back.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Because even if you consider that Agnes is probably a time travel, if there's no time travel, Agnes never would have come and started her affair with Egon's wife. His marriage wouldn't have fallen apart. He wouldn't have been investigating Ulrich. He wouldn't have lost his connection with his daughter. Mm-hmm. Maybe the cancer is because of time travel, although he also was killed because Claudia knows about future events and is trying to prevent his death, and that ends up killing him as well. So lots of things ruined in his life because of time travel.
Yeah, his granddaughter gets cancer.
Yep, his granddaughter gets cancer as well. So then we go from the 50s to the 80s. Claudia walks into the plant, and we get the reflection of this last scene because Egon is in the plant. So now older version of Egon. So the last time we had older version of Claudia with middle-aged version of Egon. This time we have older version of Egon. With middle-aged version of Claudia. So it's like the exact reverse of the last scene.
Yep.
So
notice that.
And before she walks in, her secretary mentions that the press left. They'll be back tomorrow for a meeting with the union. So of course we are going to get another reference to tomorrow. So something else that we're going to get in the next episode. It's kind of nice when they do that. Some of the things that you have coming up in the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
I also noted here that Egon has prostate cancer, which is a male-only cancer, and Regina has breast cancer, which is a female-only cancer.
Well, female-dominant cancer.
Yeah, it's female-dominant. I don't know if women can get prostate cancer, actually. Maybe they can. But it's, it's a cancer that overwhelmingly afflicts males and overwhelmingly afflicts females.
Yes, definitely.
So I thought that's got to be intentional. Otherwise, it would just be, it could be lung cancer or skin cancer. But so having
both metastasized,
right, and both, the daughter of Claudia and the father of Claudia. And I wrote down in parentheses, gloomy music. That was what it said for this kind of music in this episode. And from there, we go to the 50s, and we have the 50s version of Egon and Claudia. He comes home. He's brought flowers for Doris. Child Claudia now has 2 loops in her hair instead of just 1 like earlier. And Egon tells her he has a secret. He says, I believe I saw a witch today. And Claudia responds with, you are too much of a good person. The world doesn't deserve you. So the exact thing that the White Devil version of Claudia said to Egon, he hears from his daughter too.
Yep, and then he just says deja vu.
Yeah.
Which is the second or third time deja vu has been brought up.
Yeah, I remember deja vu being brought up before. So just like what a knockout 3 scenes in a row, though, to get these 3 different instances of Claudia and Egon connecting at 3 different time periods.
Yeah, and another instance of, the future affecting the past with something said to Egon. Right.
So, and I mean, obviously it's not enough that's going to change anything, but it's these little things that
can't change anything.
Egon never is able to fully put this stuff together, but he's always these just weird things that happen. He can't ever figure out why. And then I feel like we get a 4th scene that really is like the culmination of this. Then we get back to the 80s, we get Egon and Ulrich. So now 2 men who are both older, one man who's out of his time, and another one who's literally running out of time. And they're talking about how they used to think the worst thing in the world was to lose a kid, but the kids always leave us, which I thought was kind of a weird thing to be talking about, especially with somebody who you arrested. But I guess it's just they're just, talking about the kids who have arrived and disappeared from Winden. Egon brings up that there was a strange boy who showed up 6 months ago. And so Egon brings that up, and he shows the picture of Mikkel to Egon. Egon shows the picture of Mikkel to Ulrich, and Ulrich rightfully freaks out and starts choking Egon. Although I don't know if choking him is going to do much, because if you kill him, then you're never going to find out where Mikkel is. And Ulrich is very upset.
Well, I mean, imagine 66 years. Or however, 33
years, yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, I know. I mean, the irrational, I get it. The rational behavior kind of goes out the window at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's screaming at him. He says, you knew this whole time and you didn't tell me, which, again, not really rational. He didn't know this whole time. He didn't know it was your son. Ulrich is assuming...
But to him, I mean, since Ulrich has been a teenager, since Ulrich's been a teenager, he's always felt like Egon's had it out for him.
That's true. Yeah, so... another really good scene in a row. Just such a good stretch. Like, what a run from these 4 scenes.
Definitely.
All about Egon. So, and I know that I think the next episode, Ulrich is going to escape from the mental hospital and see Mikkel. I know we're getting that soon. I just can't remember when.
Yep.
And then we go back to the 50s. So we keep kind of ping-ponging back between the 50s and the 80s. In the 50s, we get younger HG, and the White Devil version of Claudia visits him. This is the reverse of the scene that we saw earlier with older version of HG. And he says he hasn't had time to finish the machine, and she says, that's okay. It's going to take you 33 years for it to be ready. And she gives him the book, and she says, you will understand, and then we will meet again. I will die soon. So it was the reverse of the conversation earlier. And she says, this will be ending soon, referring to the last cycle, which we start hearing more and more about. So the bootstrap paradox, so much bootstrap paradox in this episode. between everything with Egon and Claudia, and now with Claudia and HG. She gives him the book, but there was no beginning to the book because she gets it and it goes in a cycle. Then we get one of those, pre-final episode montages that the show loves to do. So we see Helge and the Bible, and he's holding the coin. So he's clearly still, has good feelings about his time when he was taken. We have Egon. He's looking at the record. We have Ulrich looking out the window. We have Greta looking through a window at Helge. And we have Egon seeing Doris and Agnes together. So they're having dinner and he sees them. So lots of people observing others and kind of catching up with our characters again. We see Claudia puts the liquid in the machine. And then we get a scene between Claudia and Noah. This is the big scene that I kept referencing incorrectly. Claudia sees Noah and they talk, and Noah says Agnes betrayed her to Claudia. And Claudia is saying that Adam is still playing you. Again, paradise is brought up. Claudia says there is no paradise. And she says, if you were free and you had a choice, then you would have free will and you would use your choice, because Claudia knows that Noah has the newspaper that says that she's going to be dead. Of course, this whole time Noah is holding a shotgun.
Yep.
Noah fulfills the fate. He does not have free will. He shoots Claudia and kills her. And right when that happens, you brought this up earlier, Agnes jumps and looks at Tronte. So there definitely is some weird connection between Agnes and Claudia, other than that they've just been working together. Maybe it's just that. But the fact that she knows, unless the shooting happened like right outside her window, there's no other way for her to really get that.
I mean, she seemed to like feel it when it happened.
Right,
she took a breath. So.
Maybe Agnes is, I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to get too much into alternate universe, but could be like Agnes's alternate universe Claudia.
Man, I don't know.
Yeah. I hope it's not just everybody's alternate universe versions of each other. It'd feel cheap.
Yeah.
We get the reveal of the newspaper clipping that it was the mysterious white devil looking person. So that is going to be Claudia. Somehow no one knew that Claudia had the final pages. I guess Agnes just told him that. We don't really know how he knew that. And he opens the final pages. We can't see what's on them. It looked like one of them was the map to where the machine is buried, that Claudia buried it for herself. But Noah does say, no, Charlotte, that can't be true. So do we know what that is? What can't be true?
Maybe it's Elizabeth.
I was thinking it could be Elizabeth. I was thinking that, or it could just be that Charlotte is going to get killed in the apocalypse that happens at the end of the season. But that seems like that isn't big enough to be what really shakes him to his core.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just weird because when Noah as a boy meets Elizabeth, you would think he knows a little bit about her. Or like you would think that they kind of know about each other when they meet, but I don't know. Maybe we don't know.
Secrets.
Yeah. Then we see younger Claudia right after her older version is killed. We see the middle-aged version of her from the 80s. She's time traveled. She walks out of the woods and she sees Regina and sees that Regina has no hair, implying Regina is also dying of cancer. And now she fully understands what it means that she's running out of time with Regina.
Yep.
And so between seeing Regina and her father having cancer, this is what's going to set her on her path to try to fix and undo everything.
Yep.
So, and then the final scene of the episode, we finally get some more Adam. Adam is talking about being connected to the family. He asks if Noah got the pages from Claudia. Noah says she did not have them. And Adam says she got what she deserved. In the end, we all get what we deserve. And the camera focuses exclusively on a photo of child Claudia.
Yeah, I don't have any takes really from that.
No, I mean, I guess it's that Adam at this point knows Claudia is his mortal enemy. And so even as a child, he knows that, that early on, she's his enemy. It's the only thing I could think.
I just think it's so interesting because, Adam, Noah, I mean, I guess those aren't really their names, but like Claudia doesn't have like a biblical pseudonym.
Right. Yeah. Well, it could be the, Team God versus Team Time.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Or she's Satan to them because I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's still. I want to keep remembering that Claudia and Clausen are such close names to each other that maybe there's some connection there that we don't yet know about.
Yeah.
Um,
Good
yeah,
episode.
I just feel bad for. It's a great episode. Episode 3, of course, it had to be a good episode because it was an episode 3 on this show.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel so bad watching this episode for Egon. Like, he's so close. He's dancing around the truth in this episode so many times, and he just never gets there.
Yeah, it's kind of the frustration Ulrich always has with him. He's like, you still don't get it. Like,
Right.
You're always going to be an idiot.
Yeah. You're so
like,
it keeps getting so close.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're bringing up like same thing. He's as close now as he has ever been, yet he still doesn't get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, tons happened in this episode. This was one right after I finished it. I was like, man, I know where this show is going. I've been focusing so hard on this one. I'm taking notes, and I'd still like just thinking about this one really hurts my brain. Especially the for some reason I keep going back to Jonas when I see Agnes in that yellow dress, and that's what like I kept having to be like, no, she's not related to Jonas that we know of. So
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, maybe everybody's related, and from because if it's the story of the Bible, everybody. I mean, if really it's kind of mirroring the story of the Bible, I should say, and everybody comes from Adam and Eve, then everybody would be related.
Right.
And the whole world is just incest. And I kind of realized that yesterday when I was just talking to a friend of mine, and she brought up the Bible, and she was like, yeah, if people really believe the Bible is how the world exists, then we're all products of incest.
Right.
And I was like, whoa. I was like, you may have just solved like the show I've been trying to figure out for the longest time. And if Adam in like alt world Martha is Eve, and they're the result of everybody existing in both worlds, and really neither world should exist or something. And it's like the Bible, similar to the Bible. I don't know enough about the Bible to understand the allegories with it, though.
I mean, we definitely, if we're talking about Adam and Eve, we did see Noah eating the apple, which is symbolic of Adam and Eve, and the
maybe Noah's like the snake.
Well, I think in that case, I think Noah is the snake, right? Yes, that's what you were saying. Yep, because that's what happens: is the snake arrives, the snake gives Eve the forbidden fruit. Now, it doesn't give it to Adam; gives it to Eve. So, did he give the apple to Mikkel, or was he just eating the apple in front of Mikkel?
He was just eating the apple in front of Mikkel.
So that's what we should pay attention to. If he gives the fruit to somebody, maybe Elizabeth. They get together. Maybe
he gives Elizabeth a watch, but I don't think that's in the Bible.
And he gives Elizabeth a daughter as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's definitely something to watch. I mean, and we did have that line in this episode that I brought up earlier, and I don't even remember who said it. Is it Claudia says it to Agnes? He says our entire lives. She says our entire lives are defined by family, Sigmundas. So maybe they are all from this family of Sigmundas, and it's a family tree that expands out.
Yeah, I mean, when they're showing Adam's, like, the 4 families there at the end, it looks like all 4 are related.
Yeah, it's 4. Like, so, yeah, it's the Nielsen, the Cronwald, the Doppler, and the Tiedemann families from the present timeline.
And I believe in this one, all of them had smiling pictures. But
I was trying to tell. I couldn't.
I know the Tiedemans did.
Yeah. They didn't look unhappy, but I wasn't sure to be.
Yeah, and there's a lot of unhappy family portraits. So
yeah. So, all right. Well, this super heavy episode, lots unpacked. I think this was a very long podcast that we had, but that's all right because there's a lot to talk about. So that's why we're doing this now before the season comes out, because otherwise we'd be so lost when season 3 started if we didn't do this.
Yeah, and don't forget the MVPs to start.
Oh yeah, yep. Nope. I'm looking right at our MVP scoreboard. So who are you giving your MVP point to for this episode?
I think in this episode I would actually I'm going to give it to Agnes.
Agnes. All right.
Yeah. So I think she did a lot of behind the scenes work. So she's kind of like, Giannis, the Greek freak when he wins the MVP. You don't see a lot of his games on TV,
right?
But you hear about it and you see the results of it, and he's there at the end. And
you don't want to try to pronounce Giannis's last name?
Yeah. And I don't want to try to pronounce Agnes's last name because I don't think we know it yet
Right.
necessarily. So, we're told it's, Agnes Nielsen, but that's what we're told.
Yes.
And, we're told she's the mother of Tronte, but that's what we're told.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she's Bernadette's mother from an alternate world. Who knows? But
maybe she's Bernadette.
She could be Bernadette. We don't know. But Agnes says something and does something enough to get Noah to be exactly where he has to be, to have like one of the biggest moments happen, which is Claudia get killed.
Yeah.
So Agnes is like, send it up.
Yeah, we got we got the most about Agnes that we've had in this show. So
yeah, she looks like she's helping Doris or whatever her name is have a nice meal.
Mm-hmm.
She's a homewrecker. She's got it all.
Yeah,
she's taking the Hannah game plan, and it's like she's related to Hannah in a way. Maybe.
I actually was thinking she reminds me of Hannah in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So she's the same age as Hannah, so she can't be Hannah, but could her and Hannah be sisters?
Yep.
We don't really know much about Hannah's lineage except her father, who's like the dry cleaner.
Yeah, we don't know a lot. But,
all right. Yeah. Well, Jonas does have a huge lead, but luckily we can't really give Jonas an MVP point in this unless you want to count that small scene with Adam at the end of the episode. I actually was thinking I was going to give it to Noah because I felt like he put a lot of pieces in place, but I think you brought up a good point that he's basically just a pawn in Agnes's game. And Agnes and Claudia put him in the place where he's supposed to be. So I'm going to give it to Egon. It's like a sympathy MVP point just because I feel so bad for him. He's so close. Like, he is uncovering things. He's just not getting there 100%. So I'm going to give Egon his second MVP point.
Okay.
I almost gave it to Claudia. It was between those two, but I think Claudia will have some more chances. So Egon doesn't have very many chances coming back. So Jonas still in the lead with 5 MVP points. Mikkel, Ulrich, Alexander, Noah, and Egon have 2. Tronte, Elizabeth, Hannah, Charlotte, Gretchen, HG, Peter, Claudia, and Agnes all have 1 MVP point as we get 3 episodes through season 2. So we'll be back tomorrow, probably, schedule pending, with episode number 4 that is titled The Travelers. And I don't remember exactly what happens in episode 4 of The Travelers, but I'm assuming we were going to get lots of timeline jumping and traveling. I think this is when we're finally going to get Jonas showing up to meet Adam. I know that's coming. It's got to be coming soon. I mean, we're going to, after that episode, we're going to be halfway through the season. So we're going to have that meeting very soon.
Yep.
So, and I know we have Mikkel. I guess we do know that Mikkel is going to be interviewed by Egon in the next episode. That was referenced. As well as a couple other things that are going to happen, quote unquote, tomorrow. So that will be fun when hopefully we record tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. So as always, make sure you send in your questions and feedback to us. We'll either answer it on these episodes or in our major big feedback preseason episode that we're going to do. So you can reach us on Twitter. I'm at BrooksZA.
And I'm at Aaron JAYBROOKS.
Aaron J. Brooks on Twitter. Definitely reach out to us. Let us know. We've had some people let us know that they are listening as they're trying to catch up. So we're glad to be a valuable resource to you, to be your blueprint heading towards season 3. So, and of course, subscribe so you don't miss an episode of Digesting Dark as we get towards season 3. And then we're trying to figure out how quickly we can get out some season 3 episodes once the season drops, to A, avoid spoilers, but also B, keep up with people who aren't going to be able to not binge it. Although both of us support taking your time with this show. Binging it does nothing because there's just so much to digest, which is why we created this podcast in the first place.
Agreed.
All right. Well, we will see you next time for season 2, episode number 4, The Travelers.
See you.